You know what doesn't belong in your epic summer plans? Getting burned by your old wireless bill. While you're planning beach trips, barbecues, and 3-day weekends, your wireless bill should be the last thing holding you back. That's why so many people are making the switch to Mint Mobile.
Say hasta la vista to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you.
All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network.
Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts.
Ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium service from Mint Mobile for $15. Amy, didn't you say that your sister is on Mint Mobile and loves it?
Yes, it was the best option for her when she finally got her own mobile wireless plan.
Honestly, I think that it might be the best option for anyone who needs their own mobile wireless plan. It sounds amazing.
This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get your summer savings and shop premium wireless plans at mintmobile.com/booktalk. That's mintmobile.com/BOOKTALK.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months. 5 gigabyte plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Tax and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy, your besties with a literary podcast that deep dives into your favorite novels. This is Jack.
And I'm Amy. We're currently taking a break from preparing our Crown of Midnight season to talk to Alessandra Ferreri, the head of content at Wattpad.
Wattpad is a leading global web novel platform storytelling community from Webtoon Entertainment, with nearly a decade spent accumulating her fanthropological understanding of online communities and their evolving appetite for stories. Alessandra specializes in balancing both the art and science of uncovering adaptation hits on Wattpad for screens and bookshelves around the world. Previously, Alessandra was the VP of Content at Wattpad Webtoon Studios, an integrated studio and publishing business from Webtoon Entertainment that has introduced webcomics and web novels to new entertainment audiences around the world. Welcome, Alessandra.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my God, thank you. It was a dream come true that I didn't even know was a dream, if that makes sense. I didn't know this was an option in life.
Like just Wattpad in general?
To have Wattpad on the podcast.
Yeah. Amy and I are deep fanfic lovers. Deep. So this was just one of those where we're like, oh my, like the Wattpad. Wow.
So Alessandra, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is a VP of content and maybe how you got to Wattpad?
Yeah. So my title is actually head of content for Wattpad. And I've been here for 10 years, which is a lifetime, but like the most fun lifetime ever. I started out in traditional publishing, working specifically in like the indie space. And that was really like what I went to school for. It was like the dream. It's what I wanted to do. But then I very quickly kind of opened myself up a little bit more from that traditional space. And it was just a happy accident that I found a job posting for. It was a community engagement on Wattpad. And I had no idea what Wattpad was. Like, had never read a fanfic in my life, like nothing. And I was like, this sounds really interesting and really fun. Like, let's give it a go. And then fast forward now, I'm like running our content department on Wattpad, and I same like fanfic girly through and through, but also just like a storytelling champion. And it's been just such a exciting career trajectory for me to be able to do this every single day. It was like the happiest accident, but it's like I wake up every day like really excited to see what's next, what's going on the platform, what's happening in pop culture, all that stuff. So I'm just so excited to chat with you a bit more about what that looks like on Wattpad. And
I love that you really jumped in head first with fan fiction, especially if you weren't familiar with it. You're like, okay, so explain to me Dramani. What is Drary? What are we doing?
Yeah, literally, I like remember texting a friend who I knew was in the fandom space to be like, send me some stuff that you think that I could get.
Out of curiosity, what was your first like genre fanfic?
One Direction, 100%. But also it just like quickly evolved into everything. So like Supernatural, Harry Potter,
Twilight. That was me. That was my first Inuyasha, then Twilight, then Harry Potter.
Yeah, I think it's a slippery slope, but like the best hope to be on. And it was a quick education, and then from there, I just like couldn't get enough. Like, and it really just transformed my thinking around literature in general, not just fan fiction, but also original fiction, also just how storytelling can be so unconventional and impactful and powerful. So it's just
Well, luckily we're here to talk to you about the impactful part. So we're going to our first question. Wattpad has been the starting point for some of the biggest BookTok sensations and screen adaptations like After and The Kissing Booth. I mean, like, I didn't even know about The Kissing Booth until I started until it came out, and like the third one came out, and I was like, holy crap, you were on Wattpad first? And more of these popular stories originated from fan fictions or odes to fan fictions, right? And from your perspective, what makes a fanfic or fanfic-inspired story ripe for that mainstream crossover? Because there is a bridge. I can see a bridge, but I couldn't tell you what makes this bridge a bridge.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think to start off, fandom in general is also, in the last 10 years since I've been here, has become so much more mainstream also. It's no longer like really sitting on the fringes of pop culture. It's like very much part of pop culture. And so that bridge and that crossover doesn't even feel as dramatic to make that leap anymore. Like, everyone is looking for the next great thing, their next obsession. And I think that as more and more of the storytelling platforms, kind of like Wattpad and even like BookTok, are becoming more popular, that gap is closing further and further. But in terms of actual fan fiction, I think what's the most interesting thing about fan fiction is that for many authors, it really is that gateway into writing, or it can be. And we've seen this happen, like you mentioned, with people that grew up reading and writing on Wattpad and then became these really successful authors in their own right. Fan fiction as a specific writing tool or a writing medium is this like really approachable entry point into storytelling. And by building on or like taking inspiration from something that's really, really familiar, you get to kind of explore that what if, but you don't have to necessarily start from scratch. So you already have a world around you. You already have like a character that you can jump off of. So I think that means writers who are maybe using their fandom as a jumping off point can focus more on craft, more on voice, more on like hitting that emotional resonance without having to build everything from the ground up. And also because of that, and this is why I think it's so impactful, it actually means that the emotion in a lot of fan fictions just hits that much harder because it becomes a focus, and it really is the draw of the story. So I think in terms of like a crossover appeal, at least, when stories are able to strike that same type of emotional chord that you find in fan fiction, especially when it's non-fan fiction, and you can kind of play around with our expectations a little bit of like what storytelling is, what the storytelling structure looks like, I think that's when something can really land and really surprise us, which in turn will inspire more people who will then do their own version, and then suddenly you have like a brand new trend.
I love that. I mean, it like something that you said there about like authors really getting their start and being able to find almost like a safe space to start their writing journey. Because there's one thing you said, that you're a creative writing major too in college. And I don't know if you heard this, but in our professors, like one of the first things they said are like, hey, your first book's going to suck. Like, be prepared. Your first book's going to be trash no matter how hard you do it. Be prepared for that. And I think that places like Wattpad really gives authors a space for that and to experiment. Like there's a lot of authors, I think Julie Soto is one of them, who extremely popular fan fiction. I didn't even realize she's already written a bunch of other books that's not fan fiction. So authors still have fun in the space without any kind of stakes in play.
Yeah, I think that we talk a lot about fan fiction being like the gateway into writing, but it's also just a gateway into any type of writing at any stage of your career. There's so many published writers that will, whether it's on Wattpad or on another platform, will come on and write fan fiction just to like play around with, you know, a different genre or a different storytelling, and it can be really accessible that way.
Yeah, I mean, I got into fan fiction more than 20 years ago now.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But it is some of the, it's one of those places where it's the first time I saw tropes being subverted, or my expectations about tropes being subverted, or like, I don't know if you ever read any song fics, but where structure is experimented with. And I think I've seen that influence in the mainstream novels that we're reading today, because they're not your standard 90s novel anymore, or early 2000s. They're definitely evolving.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're not just content, but you're also what you call a fanthropologist. Can you walk us through what that means and how studying fan behavior helps inform what Wattpad develops or promotes?
And how can we become fanthropologists? Because yes, please.
I mean, I was going to say, I think you kind of already are, like talking, like listening to some of your episodes and listening to the deep dives you're doing to really, I think you're doing it. You're doing literary fanthropology, like to a T. So bravo. But I think
adding that to our thing. Yeah.
Well, I first heard actually fanthropology as a term on another podcast, the Ologies podcast, and they were interviewing a professional fanthropologist called Meredith Levine. And when I was listening to her interview, it's like that light bulb went off where I was like, oh, this is exactly what I am doing. This is like a really concise, simple way of explaining what we're doing. Wattpad has always been a platform for fans to connect. So fans of reading, fans of writing, fans of specific genres, specific tropes, or specific fandoms. And it does what I like to call mass niche. So we're like a user-generated platform, and a lot is happening all of the time, and none of it is static. It's always moving, it's always evolving and changing. And so when all these people around the world come to Wattpad to connect over all of these shared interests, in doing so, they're building this vibrant, evolving fan space that is both reflecting pop culture, but also simultaneously creating and contributing to it at the same time. So it's a really interesting like mix of a lot of different facets. And it became really, really clear to me really early in my career that in order to help these communities to the best of my abilities and really help them thrive, it's so much more than just identifying and reading stories. It also is about putting more effort into understanding why something is working, why something is getting popular, asking all of the whys. So Fanthropology, specifically for Wattpad, is just as much about the psychology behind why storytelling is resonating as it is about the stories themselves. And like, yeah, why this trope? Why is it drawing people into this specific story? Or also what's happening outside in the world that's potentially feeding this interest? And we're lucky because we have a lot of research at our disposal to really dig into these topics. But really what it comes down to is curiosity, like having a really strong curiosity and a devoted interest in what actually matters to our user base, and then so that we can champion them.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best examples, if anyone can, if they're trying to like figure out what you're saying, I mean, this is my guess, but would be like the recession vampire that people are calling right now, where vampires and like the popular storytelling is always like kind of happens simultaneously around recessions. So like Twilight or even the original Dracula, and then now we're getting some more vampire content. So I imagine where there's kind of like some psychology. My master's dissertation was on the gender politics of vampirism. So I'm always like fascinated with the idea of like vampires, where I'm like, oh, okay, so what's the cultural trend going on there? It's been like over 10 years. So now I'm like, I want to revisit it because there's a lot to tell of not just vampires, but like you said, it reflects the world and world reflects it.
Yeah, actually, that's funny that you mentioned vampires, because my team like just did a little, like even a mini deep dive, and we do it periodically every couple of years because it always is relevant. Vampires are always coming back around to be like, yeah, there's new things that we're going to be scared of, and we're going to infuse that into this subgenre. And I think it's such a ripe one. It's one of my favorites.
All right, mini vampire tangent. I might save it for after, but it just makes sense because like when Twilight came around, that was like my theory. My conversation was that it was like bringing back like the vampire was quote unquote saved because the female vampire embraced motherhood, which like if you're going into like the time of the like that original recession, you can kind of see like a going back to quote unquote basics. And now I think that when I look at something like Sinners, you have something that has a big, you know, play about race and how does that, how that impacts America and culturally and everything, which I think is very popular to what we're seeing today in topics. So I feel like vampires historically have been a big reflection on society.
100%. Yeah. And Nosferatu is one that I also picked up on where it was like, oh, it's literally a pandemic vampire.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
And I also like, I made this joke to Amy earlier, so this is not like original at this moment, but I'm like, I always imagine like fan fiction to be cerulean blue, Devil Wears Prada, where it's one of those moments where it's like, we decided years ago that this was going to be the most popular trend, and then it trickles down to this department store, your cerulean blue. So that's kind of how I imagine fan fiction to be.
Fandom
Fanfiction?
is
Fandom, yeah.
Randa Priestley, yeah.
Yeah.
That's collective.
So which trope or character archetypes are having a moment on Wattpad right now? I know we talked about vampires, but like what other things are you seeing? Are there any surprising spikes that caught your eye, and any you see migrating from Wattpad to BookTok to traditional publishing?
I actually think we're in a really cool time because I think BookTok is having a Wattpad moment. I think even like pop culture in general, like we're having a Wattpad moment. Everyone's in their Wattpad era right now. So we're seeing a lot of the same evergreen trends that I'd been seeing for, you know, the last decade on the platform spilling over into these spaces, spilling over into BookTok and in the mainstream conversation and getting even more popular. And it's validating too. It's like, yeah, these are really fun spaces to be telling stories in and talking to your friends about. So, I mean, simple, like right off the top, like enemies to lovers, sports romance, dark romances, werewolf. All of these things are getting so much more attention, but they've all kind of been here on Wattpad for the longest time. But that's kind of a great example of how I think Wattpad has always acted like a mirror. So we will see things on the platform enter into the pop culture space, and then we will also see pop culture trends migrate onto the platform and then get mixed around and then go back in. So it's really like cyclical. It's like this constant conversation that we're seeing back and forth.
It's the heart of trends, right? Blood goes in, blood goes out, but it's pumping in you. Yeah, I would argue, I mean, I just came up with a statement in my head and I am not ready to defend it. But if anyone would like to defend it, feel free. I'm going to say that, and as someone who's never read One Direction fan fiction, but has read a lot of the tropes, like I've seen a lot of videos talking about it, I'm going to say One Direction fan fiction directly impacted mafia romance. I said it. There we go. I don't know if I believe it. Give me an hour. I'll learn how to defend it.
You don't think it's vice versa?
No, I think there's something about being sold that that's very mafia romance. And I've seen a lot of like One Direction tropes where it's like, I was sold to One Direction type thing. And, you know, maybe that's one. I know After was a Harry Styles fanfic. I remember. And with the and with how, like, if you read After or watch After, that is a dark romance type guy. Like, he's very, like, he's not a healthy toxic guy, and toxic is just one step to mafia. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the platform definitely services this type of like escapism and wish fulfillment that works really, really well in storytelling. And I mean, any trope, especially like whether it's in a specific fandom like One Direction, or if it's even in like original romance fiction, it's all archetype based, right? And it's just like, who can you transplant into these spaces that will fulfill this kind of escapism and fantasy, really? That's usually what it comes down to.
So I think we've already kind of talked about this question, but I'll pose it anyway in case we have anything new to say. But Wattpad readers are often weeks or months ahead of broader publishing trends, as you discussed. It starts on the platform, then moves into pop culture, and then comes back and gets mixed in again. How do you see trends evolve from fandom to platform to bookstore and sometimes even to screen? And what should people be paying attention to earlier in the cycle?
Yeah, I mean, I think Wattpadders know more than anyone that they don't have to wait around for the industry to validate their appetites. Like, well. And so if they can't find a story that they're looking for on a bookshelf, they will go find it on the platform. Or even better, they'll just write it themselves. And like that is kind of, I think, where After even came from. It's like, I'm not really finding the vibe that I'm looking to read. I'm just going to do it myself. And that's a really empowering thing to do.
Yeah.
So I think in that way, Wattpad can be this early cultural radar that's resonating at a community level before it's showing up anywhere else. And it's starting to gain traction and, you know, fan base interaction and comments, and all of those conversations are happening at the same time. Because also Wattpad is just as much a social platform as it is a storytelling one. And so I find that platform engagement can be like a really good indicator of what's to come. Sometimes that looks like more readers reading one specific type of story or one specific type of genre. And sometimes that looks like more writers writing in a different space. And sometimes they're the same, and sometimes those are totally different. So it's from like a fanthropology lens, it's really interesting to see like where the ebbs and flows are happening. But in all, like, I think if you want to stay ahead of any trends, paying attention to what's inspiring people, where are people going out of their way to engage with something is really like the ticket. And also, like, none of this is done in a silo, right? Like, pop culture is a constant conversation that spans across all different mediums. And so it's just as important to tune into what's happening on Wattpad, but also what's happening in other spaces, because they're all talking to each other all the time.
Yeah, a special request for any Wattpadders. Theo James, that's my true request, is more Theo James inspired content, you know, particularly fan art, whatever. He's married. I feel guilty saying it.
And now, a word from our sponsors. As Jack knows, I'm a very handy person. I prefer to do all my own furniture building DIY, but quite frankly, there just isn't enough time in the day. That's why I use TaskRabbit.
I really wish we had TaskRabbit when we sawed apart my furniture and took it apart piece by piece just so that we can move it, because with TaskRabbit, we could have hired someone to take the whole thing out.
In our defense, it didn't fit through the door.
TaskRabbit would find a way.
They sure would. TaskRabbit connects you with skilled taskers to help with moving, mounting, furniture assembly or deassembly, home repairs, and more. Many taskers are available to help the same day. Why wait for you to do it when a tasker can do it instead?
All I had to do was download the app, or you can go to taskrabbit.com and find the best tasker for your job based on cost, skill set, availability, and my favorite part, past client reviews.
Once the tasker has completed the job, all you have to do is pay, tip, and review, all on the convenient TaskRabbit app.
Taskers have assembled over 3.4 million pieces of furniture. They have done thousands of home repairs, completed 1.5 million moves, and more.
Plus, with TaskRabbit's happiness pledge, if you're not satisfied, they'll work to make it right. They are definitely coming next week to build my girlfriend's bookshelf.
My tasker is about to organize my entire email. The virtual assistant option, bringing me so much joy. Tackle your to-do list today and get 15% off your first task at taskrabbit.com or on the TaskRabbit app using promo code BookTok.
That's promo code BookTalk, BookTalk, at taskrabbit.com for 15% off your task. TaskRabbit, book trusted help for home tasks.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Llegaron los nuevos McCrispy Strips, listos para aventurarse en la mezcla de mayo ketchup, la barbecue que quedó en el fondo de la cajita, hot fudge sundae y en la nueva creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Los nuevos McCrispy Strips, ahora en McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
It is fascinating, though. Like, I think that there's just this community with Wattpad, and I remember back in the day, which was like only, you know, now I like 2010s. But now it's me realizing that it really is back in the day. And people not realizing the Mortal Instruments was Harry Potter or like Ginny and Draco fanfiction, or I remember telling people 50 Shades of Grey was a Twilight fanfiction, and it would blow everyone's mind because there was such a stigma to fanfiction. I know when in early college, I wrote a Twilight fanfiction, and it was one of those things where it did really well in the fanfiction world. I was nominated for a number of fanfiction awards, and then being able to like go and tell people about it was just kind of this thing, like weird stigma of kind like trying to be like, I'm proud of myself, but I have to explain that it's Twilight AU, and no, they're not vampires, and this is my version and my rendition of things. And it is amazing that I feel like it's gone so well from community that's not shameful, but like something that, you know, maybe on a corner of the internet people weren't familiar with, and it really is growing or accepted, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a space that's always been kind of misunderstood. And I actually think like it opens up a whole other point, which is like, I think the interests that are often dismissed as being unserious or being like not like everyone's, I don't know, being unserious, we'll go with that, are most often the ones that are actually just tied to female fandom, and while or like male driven fandom, like sports, for instance, are like never questioned. Like it's fine if you like blow up a car, but it's like not okay if you just like really love this one artist, for instance. And like that is a tale as old as time. It's like Beatlemania versus just like enjoying the Beatles, or you know, when Taylor Swift's 1989 was re-recorded by Bryan Adams, and suddenly it was like an amazing album. Like, I know. Yeah. It's like, I mean, this is like a constant conversation that we're having. So yeah, I think like fanfiction has come a long way for sure of being a little bit more embraced. But that's like, you can say that about a lot of things. Like I remember even on Wattpad, not in the fanfiction space, but specifically in our original fiction, like new adult, no one knew in the industry what to do with new adult. Like they didn't know at the time that young adults and adulthood, they were like, what is this? Like we don't know what this is. But all of these writers on Wattpad were writing in that space because they were living that. Yeah. And so it actually helped to bring a little bit more insight into that space. And now new adults everywhere, right? And I think you can say that about, again, like a lot of things. Like for instance, I'm pretty sure the novel was like completely called trash when it first became a format.
Novel's only been around for a couple hundred years.
Yeah, it was like, this isn't poetry, then it's not thing. And so it's a constant thing that we're seeing over and over again. It just takes traditional industries and like the mainstream a lot longer to adopt and embrace new formats, but it takes creators and fans like a second. Like they know when they see it and when they feel it.
I was going to say, it also feels like a generational thing, right? We, as the teenagers that were reading fan fiction, then began writing fan fiction, we're the ones who are bringing it into the mainstream media as we create, because we're in those professions now, right? And kicking out the people who are like, why would you do that? Right? Who don't have an understanding of how impactful it can be. And I assume in 10, 20 years, there are going to be people younger than us that are creating different types of media that is going to influence Wattpad and then eventually the industry, and it will be a whole other cycle.
I've heard from various friends who are more in traditional publishing the crave for YA, and the sense that like YA just isn't what it used to be. Granted, I'm not in the YA space, but that feels like the ongoing narrative. And my personal theory to that is one of the contributing factors is that there's no longer the third place. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of third place. I'll tell for the listeners too. The third place is basically, up until now, we've always had a third place. So it was either work, school, home, and then a third place. So growing up, it would be a mall or after school sports or a park, right? Like there was always a third place. And in recent years, we no longer have a third place, especially since work from home is also becoming more popular, and, you know, going out maybe isn't as popular, and especially with the youths of today where they're much more online, and TikTok is not a third place, but they're treating it like third places. So there is this hunger for that sense of YA and a section and something dedicated for that teenage audience, because they are consuming millennial and older Gen Z content, and that's not for them. So I feel like places where like Wattpad is one of those ground base for people to start to build out that YA craving. And I would argue a place like Wattpad is a much better third place than, something like TikTok also.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'm listening to that. I'm like, there's such a huge opportunity. Like, if you're not feeling like you have the content and the stories that you want, there's a whole platform over here, it's bright orange, that is here that can absolutely accommodate for that. And I think that's where we've seen so much of our platform's innovation and so much of the trends that have then become mainstream. It's like, if you are feeling an itch or there's a need to, I just like want this kind of storytelling, or I want this in my life and I'm missing it because the industry is not giving me what I want, then these are what these spaces are for. And like Wattpad is just primed for that kind of thing. I mean, entertainment, publishing, like their jobs are often to say, we don't want this. Like, no, not right now. It's not going to fit. Like they have very much stricter parameters for what they're looking for. Whereas have those boxes to check. We just love good stories and are here to like embrace what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I don't know how to transition this, so I'm just going to go into the question. Fan fiction has often been sidelined in literary conversations, and I actually think that I'm seeing that more and more today, where people are not taking fan fiction seriously, especially some of the crossover that happens. But it's clear it's shaping a new canon for Gen Z, and like we were just saying, for Gen Alpha now, who are getting older, and it's terrifying. How has Wattpad helped legitimize fan fiction as a form of storytelling, and what does that mean for the future of literature as well? I know we kind of touched around some of these themes and topics.
Yeah, I mean, I think first I want to talk more about the idea of legitimizing stories in the first place, because I think that even talking about how to legitimize fanfic is just reinforcing those conventional standards, right? It's like rules that are designed to separate professional from everything else, but fan fiction disrupts that binary because it's not about that. It's not about getting published. It's like fan fiction is not to be monetized, and so it's about that creative joy and about communities deciding what matters to them and what stories they want to read outside of those traditional models, and that's very freeing. And I think that's more than enough to legitimize it, like by just existing. But so basically, like, I don't think it's Wattpad's job to legitimize fanfic at all, and fanfic doesn't even need us to do it. But I do think that Wattpad, if we're going to legitimize anything, it's really that. It's the idea that stories don't need industry approval or permission to be impactful and to matter. And I mean, we see it all the time. Like, 1 million readers on a story aren't going to care that the POV shifts, or that it doesn't fit perfectly in a BISAC code, or that it's like an expertly plotted hero's journey. What they're going to care about at the end of the day is how that story made them feel. And that can take so many different forms. So, I mean, when you think about the future of literature, I mean, it's cyclical, right? Like, things keep changing, evolving all the time. But I really don't think that the future of literature is going to be shaped by someone who like followed the rules to a T. I think the next on and the next one after that and the next one after that are going to come from these niche spaces, and they're going to come from something that's going to evoke a lot of surprising feelings in people, that's going to come above, polish or function, because at the end of the day, that's just how stories resonate always.
Yeah, one of the things I've seen that's been on the topic of pop culture, threads on book threads this week, I've been seeing a lot more, is this accusations of people using AI to write their stories. And I feel like it used to be, oh, this reads like a Wattpad, which I was like, it always annoyed me, where I'm like, oh, you mean it reads like Joy? That's what it reads. And that's part of the reason why we started this podcast, because everything deserves to be treated seriously, because it's also like, okay, let's go see you write a story. Like, screw you. It makes me happy. But now the conversation has shifted to like, oh, well, this is AI. We think you did AI. To which I say, like, a Wattpad community, a fan fiction community where you're uploading weekly, your audience would call that out in a heartbeat if there was anything AI. So it's just so funny where now it went from, oh, it reads to Wattpad to, oh, this is AI, where it's like, actually, things on Wattpad are going to be way more thoroughly vetted than anything else that might come out, because I think that, so kind of going to the topic of legitimization, where in this world of AI and everyone accusing everyone now of like, oh, you used AI to write that. All right, well, let's go to this corner of the internet here where readers are going to definitely be very vigilant on that and would be the first to call anything out. And I feel like it's some of the most legitimate writing now.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. Like Wattpad is a huge community of writers who are writing for the love of it. We don't need AI. Like they're flexing all of their creative muscles just fine with it.
Yeah, and fan fiction is about, like you were saying, that feeling, that joy, that passion, that like specific niche thing that we're all looking for. AI can't capture that.
No, there's something very authentic about the way that storytelling manifests on the platform. And I think that's what resonates the most on it. That's why people are drawn to it in the first place, for sure. Agreed.
So now hear me now. I think it's going to be more of a craving for that, to get away from this like AI accusation and AI people thinking that. I mean, I haven't read anything that people are accusing of being AI, but I think that it's going to be that shift of hunger for that originality. I've read some of the things that people are like, this is horrible. I'm like, you guys are being so mean. You're grabbing like one sentence out of something that I'm sure is much better, where it's the dog ran. I can't like that. There's no other way to say that. I'm sorry.
Oh, for sure. I also just, art is so subjective. Like you can't, like good and bad. That's just like very based on your own opinion.
People love being mad at something. Like one of our general complaints that Amy and I have on the BookTok community is every book review is either this is the best god tier thing I have ever read, or this is the most trash thing I've ever read. And I'm like, give me the ones that I'm like, I liked it. I enjoyed it. Like, because most of the things I read, I enjoyed it. They don't need to be god tier. I don't have time for that kind of stress.
Oh, for sure. I mean, but that speaks so much more to like social media, right? It's like polarizing in order to get clicks and attention. So if you're just like, if you like something, it's not enough. It has to be more extreme. And that's unfortunate, because there's a lot of stuff in that middle bucket that can be amazing and really good. It doesn't have to be god tier. It can just be excellent. Yeah.
So to that topic, what thrives or doesn't thrive both on Wattpad, social media, BookTok, really depends on how people engage with it, how they describe it, and how they draw or dissuade community members from going toward it. So I know we've talked about it a little bit, but like how maybe can we combat some of the structure that has been built and encourage positive community engagement to help things that deserve success be successful? And, does engaging with what's successful versus engaging with what they like about story and character differ across the platform as well? I know I kind of butchered that question, but we're going for it.
Well, I got you. Yeah, I mean, I think Wattpad and BookTok are two platforms that put the power in the hands of the fans, which means that they're able to, talk about how much they love something or don't like something or whatever it is. But that's also like just like digital communities in general are making it so much easier for people to share what they like and find others to share what they like and share that same passion. And like, yes, you're going to have people that are going to be like, I don't like something, which is totally fine. But I think the majority, like Wattpad's always been such a supportive and positive platform because you are writing for the love of it at the end of the day. And I think that when you focus it from that lens, that only makes those interests more like bigger and more widespread and more embraced. And so I think Wattpad and BookTok do have that in common. Wattpad is a source for content and story discovery in general. We have tons of viral hits. We also have amazing hidden gems that you would never think to find on the platform in every type of genre. And it's this like really beautiful talent incubator that can launch careers. And I think that BookTok can later amplify those types of things and are able to talk about how much they love it and bring some attention to something that they think is like really well done or really exciting. The Wattpad stories that often match a lot of the tropes and the things that are celebrated on BookTok. So they have this really nice synergy where they can kind of amplify each other, which I think is lovely. And it is positive when you look at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what we were touching on earlier, where sometimes TikTok does it for views. And Wattpad, at the end of the day, will always do it for passion.
Yes.
It just keeps coming back to passion. And that's kind of the love of the story.
I think that's also like such a good indicator for us. Like whether it doesn't have to be fan fiction, it can also be original fiction in general. But it's like you're telling me that you're going to go out of your way to craft something totally new. Sometimes like 80, 100, 150,000 words of something that you're just excited about and obsessed with. And I think that's really amazing. And that's like such an ultimate love letter to pop culture, to storytelling in general. Like it's really wholesome at the end of the day. And so that's what Wattpad does really well. And that's what the community has come to embrace really well about it. And I think it's
Yeah, and what I like about, I think, Wattpad over maybe your standard social media platform is that everyone recognizes the vulnerability that comes with posting something that you created, because it is hard to put something out there and not know what kind of reaction you're going to get, or if you're even going to get a reaction. Whereas I think we've trained ourselves with social media to be very reactive to it, and the more negative you can be, sometimes the better. So, or at least that's, what current trends are. I love to hear Wattpad be called wholesome, because I agree it's a vulnerable space, and it's lovely that everyone is so supportive.
Yeah. And I mean, writing in general, I mean, you would know, coming out of creative writing, coming out of these spaces, it's isolating. Like it's a lonely hobby. It's a lonely, like you're doing it all by yourself. You're in your own head. And so Wattpad is able to open that up a little bit more socially, so you can start engaging with other people. And it's so encouraging. I mean, when I started on Wattpad, one of my first things just to get a sense of what was going on is I started writing on Wattpad myself. And it was very vulnerable, but it was so addictive, and like getting those clients and getting those likes and getting that interaction, like I would wake up and immediately check, and I was like, I get it now. Like it took me like 2 seconds, and I 100% understood the magic of why people write on Wattpad and why they keep coming back to Wattpad as well, because it really does foster this sense of community and this sense of creative inspiration that you really don't get anywhere else, especially when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, also the way that it's structured. Like oftentimes people post chapter by chapter. It's like one thing at a time, and you're kind of having to appreciate every single thing that comes out. So like every chapter that comes out, you get to read it again over and over. You get to comment, you get to have a whole discussion about it. And what other community other than our podcast do you get to like go chapter by chapter with something, right? And to appreciate the art, because everything else you're going to get is a summary. Everything, whether it's threads, you only have so many characters you can write, whether it's a TikTok video, you can talk about it at most 10 minutes, but you're not going to be able to really embrace the work on a chapter by chapter basis. It's beautiful. But I was going to say, like, one of Amy's favorite books, or that she's always said, has been by Thea Guanzin. She started off in fan fiction, which then turned into Hurricane Wars.
Well, and I was reading Cassandra Clare when she was writing fan fiction before she published Mortal Instruments as well.
Yeah, and we've always been pushing that, and especially with so many more amazing fan fiction authors who are going traditionally, and we're seeing more traditionally published authors who got their start writing fan fiction. What does Wattpad look for when scouting original voices, and how are those authors changing the expectations of publishing as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, really, like any type of scouting, everyone's looking for a great story. But like I mentioned before, great or good or whatever is subjective, right? Art in general is subjective. So the approach on Wattpad is to be a bit more agnostic and kind of open when it comes to scouting. I think the rest of the world is going to tell you maybe like this isn't the right fit, or we're not looking for this right now, or no, like vampires are over, or like over and over again. But that's actually not how Wattpad approaches content at all. I think it's important to know that how we tell our stories always will evolve with the technology that's available to us, and is shaped by how people choose to express themselves in real time. And so it's constantly evolving. And platforms like Wattpad are here to embrace that fluidity, so that when we scout for exciting stories, we don't have to look for a specific type of criteria or a box to check. Like the boxes don't really apply. It really just comes down to a great story, and then period. Like that's it. And I think what we've seen is Wattpad writers who have been using that freedom to remix and reimagine genres and tropes and all of these expectations for years, and they've been thinking outside of the box. And so you can kind of see how that has eventually snowballed into influencing popular publishing trends and things. Like it's now influenced the box and has become part of the box, right? But Wattpad is still over here continuing to change that and evolve that. So it takes a little bit longer to get there from a publishing lens at least, but eventually expectations are going to shift, and we're going to become a little bit more inclusive, a little bit more open-minded, a little bit more diverse in how we look at our stories. And that's like always such a positive thing. And Wattpad being a part of that is lovely.
Yeah. I mean, the pipeline between even indie publishing to traditional publishing is getting shorter and shorter. There's a lot of authors who before they even publish their indie book are in deals with traditional publishers, and sometimes they're going to say, well, I'm going to indie publish this first, and then when it's time we'll do that traditional publishing. And so then the publication of the traditional from the indie ends up being a much shorter time, and people get confused with that timeline. And I can only imagine that pipeline shortening up even more now, as the traditional publishing is like, oh, well, maybe we go towards what people actually want and we go to over here.
For sure. I mean, you would be experts in this, but like Romantasy is such a great example of that, where, I mean, Romantasy has been on the platform since the beginning of time.
Yes.
I was going to say dawn of time.
It wasn't necessarily called Romantasy. It was called, romantic fantasy, but it was very much like a thing. Like, I remember reading stories like years ago where like a YA love triangle, but then like one of them was a dragon. And I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Nobody that I was talking to like really got it. And then fast forward to now, Romantasy is this huge, booming, like traditionally published like thing. And it was like, we've been here the whole time. But I think what has kind of changed and where that conversation between Wattpad and more traditional publishing kind of is Wattpadders have adopted Romantasy as the portmanteau to describe their story. So they're like, oh, is this how you're going to call it? Great. Then we're going to take that as well and like tag our stories so you can find our stories. But no, they've kind of been here like the whole time.
The Romantasy genre is like, Amy and I were at Barnes & Noble and we were just like, fantasy, romance. I'm like, just come up with the new, like, just put it where we want. Just accept it. I want my little Romantasy, like, actual thing written here. And yeah, but people just don't realize that it's just always been there. Just embrace it, guys.
So you've been at Wattpad for 10 years, and like with the Romantasy genre, you've seen how it's been on the platform. Now it's called something in the mainstream industry, so now everybody's tagging it as Romantasy on the platform. How do you foresee the platform continuing to evolve over time, and what do you think is next?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think Wattpad, like I said, has always been this mainstay for storytelling and story discovery. Like right from the beginning, it just hit some magical chord and everyone was like, we get it. This is what we're going to do here. It's this sense of community, it's creative freedom, it's like pure joy of creative expression. And so way more than a decade later, this is still very much true. But I think what's actually changed is more the world around it. Like fandom specifically and fan spaces are so much more open, so much more celebrated, and like more influential than ever. And I think that's going to continue to be true. So it's this like wonderful opportunity to kind of be more in the conversation, but not necessarily to change the function of what Wattpad is really good at already and what it's always been really good at. The thing that's been really great to see, and we talked a little bit about how, people that grew up reading and writing on Wattpad are now becoming these makers, and they're in these industries and they're making the decisions. Legacy readers can spot a Wattpad trope a mile away. And it's this like really comforting callback to stories that made them feel something. And you kind of want to replicate that feeling. So that's why there's this newfound like relevancy in like things that are Wattpad coded, right? They're everywhere. They're in movies and they're in the books and they're in TV shows, like they're everywhere. So it's nice to see that the world is kind of finally caught up to how fun it is to just love what you love and write what you want and read what makes you happy and share it with all your friends and just celebrate it. Like fandom in general is just such a joyful space to be in. And so it's really nice to kind of see that be a little bit more prevalent. I think that even if your tastes evolve, as they do and as they will as you get older, there will always be something for you on Wattpad. And that speaks to who you are right now. And also, like, if there isn't, you can write it, which is a wonderful thing, right? So I guess, like, to think about what's next, I am just as excited to see what's next as you are. I don't know, because it's really in the hands of these incredible creatives that are going to come now, in the past, in the future. They're just going to keep evolving. I think that the one thing that we can bet on is that the Wattpad community is going to just keep surprising us over and over. And I think that's really exciting, and I can't wait.
Make Omegaverse mainstream. That's all I ask. That's my begging plea to the community. I do want to point out something that we've talked about, not in here, but amongst our listeners. And one of the best things about Wattpad is that people can go read stories for free. And reading is a privilege. Like, that's something that we truly stand on, is that I don't think people realize that reading's a privilege. Not everyone can afford books, let alone are able, have the access to books, have the time to read, or even have the ability to read, right? And there's a certain amount of gatekeeping when it comes to that, I love traditional publishing. I hope to be traditionally published. But again, there's a certain level of gatekeeping because it comes down to numbers and having to make sales. And I really want to emphasize to people having not just a community of readers and writers like Wattpad, not just having that, but having a space where you can go read for free incredible works. You are bypassing the privilege that comes and some of the gatekeeping that comes with the literary space. I remember when I interned at a top publishing place, I'm like, I don't want to spill their name, but I was like, early in my career, they were just like, oh, well, this can't be the 3-book series. Then we're going to bypass that. And it's like, sometimes it does come down to dollars, and bypass that. Go to a place where you can read things for free and enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like such an accessible platform for anyone at any phase of their reading journey, of their writing journey. Like, it's so open and inclusive in that way. And also, I know what you talked about, it doesn't have to be at the expense of traditional publishing either.
Yeah.
Like, you can have both. You can read and Wattpad, and you can consume books that are published as well. Like, it's such a complement to one another. And I think I found that too, as someone who came from traditional publishing and really thought, like, literary publishing is the only way. It's the thing I want to read. And then my world opened up by even getting the privilege of working here. So you can kind of see where you can mix and match, like, the media that you consume. What makes you happy? Like, go for it. And I think being more well-rounded in that sense is like, just follow the vibe, and you'll be so much happier for it.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time to talking to us, to speaking with us and answering some of our questions. We truly, truly love fan fiction. We love the community that online writing provides. So thank you so much for coming on here and talking us through that a little bit more.
Thank you both. It was so great to meet you. And I'm so glad that you're doing this podcast too. It's just like awesome to be deep diving into content all day, every day. So,
we're fanthropologists. That's why. We're just like a group. We're just 3 fanthropologists chatting. That's all. I'm going to make ourselves a badge. Thank you so much. And, hopefully one day we can come back and continue this conversation.
Anytime.
Omegaverse makes its big break.
Yeah.
It's trickling in through Allie Hazelwood.
Allie's doing the work. Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this special episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy. Stick around for Thursday's episode, where we discuss listener thoughts ahead of our Crown of Midnight season.
We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We would also love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or a Patreon exclusive episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk. Bye!